Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix 343rd film from 2021. It's the South Korean space western film called Space Sweepers. This one's directed by Jo Sung-hee and stars Song Joonh-ki, Tae-ri, Seon-kyu, and Hae-jin. I am Jesse and I'm your host. Thank you for joining me today for this international film, which is quite a big film really when we start getting into it. But as always, if you haven't seen this film and want to watch it, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on because we will spoil it as we go. And we start the show off with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one is about a misfit space crew who are trying to make ends meet. They find a lottery ticket, and this is their ticket out, but it's more than meets the eye. Intriguing. I like giving like a little intriguing sort of summary of what's going on. Don't want to give away too much of the film. We will once we talk about some characters and scenes. But how did this one end up on Netflix? So around the world, the translation. So in Korean, I think it's pronounced Sangryho. That actually translates to Spaceship Victory. So this is obviously about a spaceship. In Portuguese, it's called New Space Order. And also Victory Mission. In Bosnian, it's called Space Debris Scavengers. Not bad. In Czech, it's called Cleaners of the Universe. I like that one. It's a little bit like Masters of the Universe, isn't it? In Chinese, it's just called Victory. In Uzbek, it's called Guardians of Samo. And in Vietnamese, it's also called Victory Ship. This did have a working title of Lightning Arc. I don't mind that because this film could very well lead to an arc of films as well, I guess. The tagline was, "These misfits just might save the world." Probably gives away a little bit about this film in that tagline. This was regarded as the first Korean film that was a space blockbuster, so Netflix on board for this one. The director, Jo Sung-hee, started writing the actual story for this film 10 years prior to the film's release, after a friend talked to him about the dangers of space junk. He said that it started with the idea of space travelers collecting space junk. I'd heard about how these fast-moving fragments of space debris are growing and leading to in-space collisions. I realized that this subject had already been dealt with in animation and games, but never in film. I started writing the script wondering how Koreans who possess a tenacious mentality would approach this problem. It's a very literal sort of way of coming towards this film. We go to May of 2019, where the Chinese multinational entertainment company, Huai Tencent, invested $4.2 million in the film, and the visual effect company Dexter Studios, who were behind the production of the films along with The Gods, The Two Worlds, Ashfall and Wandering Earth, were hired for this film. Principal photography began on July 3rd, 2019, and filming was completed by November the 2nd. In June of 2020, it was announced that the release of the film was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, with a plan for the film to premiere during the Chuseok holiday in Korea. In August of 2020, the release was once again postponed due to the increase of COVID-19 cases in South Korea. We then go to November of 2020, where it was announced that the film would be released exclusively on Netflix, with Space Sweepers being released on the 5th of February 2021. In May of 2021, and this is very hard to find any further information on, but it's been announced that a second film is being developed. On release, the film did debut at number 1 on Netflix in 16 countries, including France, Malaysia, Croatia, South Korea, and the Philippines. The movie also dominated Netflix daily top 10 rankings in 80 countries upon its premiere. The film also gathered more than 26 million household viewers on Netflix during the 28 days of its release, which equivalates to 53 million hours of watching. The actor in the film, Song Joonh-ki, said of the film in regards to Netflix, he said, I've seen it on television at home and through my iPad on set. I know there have been some responses about how the film might have been received differently if it premiered in theatres, but personally, I'm not one to dwell on things that didn't happen. Rather, I really liked the fact that I could see the film anywhere, whether it was on a television or a smartphone screen. So a little bit of support there for the Netflix release from the cast for this film. Like I said before, this was released on the 5th of February 2021. It was filmed in Seoul in South Korea, and it did have 7 wins at award ceremonies with a further 17 nominations. And this was for a range of visual effects, sound, cinematography, etc. Because visually, we'll probably talk about it soon, but visually, this film is pretty good. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? So on Rotten Tomatoes, it sits at 70%. That's on 27 reviews, so definitely fresh. The audience is very similar on 78%. That's on more than 500 ratings. IMDb, tiny bit lower, 6.5 out of 10 on 39,000 ratings. Then we go over to Letterboxd, where it's sort of similar, 3.3 out of 5 on a bit over 30,000 ratings. But it's been logged by 41,000 people. And on Metacritic, where they use the traffic light system of green, yellow, or red. This is both green from the critics and audiences. The critics sits at a 64 out of 100 on 4 critic reviews, so green, and the audience at a 6.8 out of 10 on 34 reviews, so also green too. So some positives for this film. What are my early thoughts for this one? I really enjoyed this. I think, I like Star Trek, I like Star Wars, and this is like a multicultural version of that. We know Zack Snyder has tried a similar sort of thing with Rebel Moon recently, and we do have some bonus episodes on those films if you want to go back and listen to them. But this works almost better than those films from him as a space opera, I think. So pretty positive from me. Let's talk about the characters. So like we sort of mentioned, this is about a spaceship that has a whole bunch of misfits on it. The first, or the main sort of person we need to talk about, is Tae-ho. He is, and we see this through flashbacks and things like that, but this is a guy who was well respected in society, but has had a fall from grace because of the care and humanity he actually showed by adopting a young child, because he was a soldier. He's meant to be able to kill. And we see that this child is ripped away from him, and his arc in this film is about making enough money, no matter what, to try and reunite with her. In the past he was a child soldier, and he's been chewed up and spat out of this system because he no longer has this ability, or almost an inability to kill anyone anymore. The other characters on the ship, we've got Captain Jang. So she, apparently in the making of this film, she had they filmed many more scenes with her, but they took them out to sort of cut any development or changes in her character because they wanted to keep the idea of revenge throughout the film. So I guess that's her character is all about revenge and plotting against the people in this world that are allowing Earth to be destroyed. I guess the one change that we do see was that she did stop being an alcoholic by the end of the film. So that was the one progression we could see from her. Another character on the ship, we've got Tiger Park. He's the guy that sort of on the outside appears as this badass, but he's super sweet on the inside, especially through his protectiveness of Cottonim, who we'll talk about in a moment. They have a robot on ship as well. His name is Bubs, and his progression throughout the film is striving for his or her own identity, and some really good representation in how that's done through that character too. I did mention before Kang Cottonim, or Dorothy as she's referred to. She's this little girl who's supposed to be an android and has a bomb inside her, but the idea of humanity and the human side of her, and she's the one that brings out that softer side of all the space crew, and by the end they're all going to do anything to protect her. She does lots of drawings, lots of childlike things which highlight her innocence and the chance that that innocence should mean that she should be able to have success in life no matter what. The villain of the film, James Sullivan, they put this guy, he's an on-your-nose villain. He's meant to be the wealthiest man in the world. He uses his money and wealth and power to colonize Mars as an alternative for this dying planet Earth that we mentioned. Morally, he's questioned throughout about how he uses his money. Like, could it not be spent better in trying to fix the issues on Earth first? But we see through flashbacks that he's dealt with trauma in his youth, and he's got this attitude that humans are dirty and only the purest of humans should be able to survive, and in his head he's making the world a better place. So they try to give you a little bit of moral ambiguity with him as a character as well. The director, Sung-hee Jo, 6 directing credits, some shorts, and by the look of it, a very well received film called A Werewolf Boy, a Korean film. So maybe that one's something that I need to check out and add to my watch list as well. Time to talk about some scenes. What are some scenes that stood out? What are some ones that didn't work? So we start off with a good one. So there's a moment where the crew realise the little girl, Cottonim, is wanted and that she's a bomb. And she starts having like this seizure, and they all drop to the floor, covering their heads. I thought that was quite humorous. And there are a lot of humorous moments in this film too. And this continues a little bit with Tao-ho, who has this real cautious approach to Cottonim because he doesn't want her to explode and he's worried whatever he does will set her off. I thought that was quite funny. there's a moment where the police rock up on the ship and they do this search for Cotnim, and she's hiding and moving around the spaceship, and the whole crew are freaking out that she's going to be found, and Jang, she stands up to this police guy and was like, you're corrupt, blah blah blah. And so he starts to leave, and the robot Bubs just gives this perfectly timed F off to him. I thought that was great as well. The bonding between Cotnim and Tae-ho when they sell the tomatoes that she grows through her power, I thought that was really sweet too. There's these nanobots, or these things that overtake that, are in space, and there's this moment where they overtake the ship and it's ready to crash and burn out, and they're all going to die, and Cotnim uses her power to save the ship, and she passes out from exhaustion, and the crew are all worried about doing CPR and how to save her, and then she just farts. It was funny, and then she wakes up and she's like, who farted? And then I think there was a line that was like, I honestly pooped a little bit too. Fart jokes, you can't go wrong, really. And finally, Bubs the robot, like constantly talking about wanting to have human parts throughout the film, and there's this moment where Park kills someone and takes their hand and just gives it to Bubs and says, you asked for one, it's warm. That was also humorous. I guess most of the scenes I enjoyed in this were some of the humorous moments. Things that didn't work, there's only a couple of things. Tiger Park and Tae-ho, they have these bonding sessions over trying to, earn the trust of Cotnim. They're trying to wash her hair. It's just a little bit on the nose. And the final battle, the visual effects were amazing, really well done. It's a good little twist. But Sullivan, the villain, it looks like he's in a TIE fighter from Star Wars. It was just like, make it look like a little bit different. We know the visual of a TIE fighter. I just thought that was a little bit dodgy. Anyway, what's the film trying to say? What's some themes? What's some ideas? Capitalism plays a big part. That idea of colonizing Mars. It's almost like reflecting what billionaires are doing in trying to spend money to explore space in case Earth is destroyed. Like that idea of greed too, and abusing the Earth and not looking after it. And is space the only way to go once this happens to our planet? It's an interesting concept to think about. As we see in a lot of Korean films, that the social class system is there as well, and plays that idea of the haves and the have-nots, and how hard it is for those without anything just to survive, just to get along, and the strive to better oneself, and that power of money that's corrupt at times too, and how hard this can all be when it feels like there's no hope too. And finally, this is pretty evident in the closing moments, but family, the idea of family and the bond it can have, and making a family what you see it to be, and that does include sacrifice at times too. All right, what did I take away from this one? I think, I touched on this before as well, but the visual effects, they're exceptional really, especially that big final battle scene. The impact, and this is not to do with the special effects, but this symbol or this motif of a high five and the impact that can have, that was really sweet. And the final thing, I just couldn't get past the comparisons between Kot Jim and Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy at times. Just her ability to grow plants, I don't know, just felt weird. Anyway, IMDb. Sometimes we jump on IMDb to check out an actor or someone in the film to see if we recognize them from something before. Hasn't happened in a while for me, but Richard Armitage, he plays the villain James Sullivan, and as I was watching the film, I'm like, I know this guy from somewhere, I'm like, I need to look it up, and just as I was about to type his name in, I'm like, I remember what he's from, just before I looked his name up, and it was one of those Harlan Coben miniseries on Netflix. I think it was called Fool Me Once. He's the guy that's trying to save his wife in it, so that's where his familiar face comes from for me. Some questions, some pondering, some thoughts, some ideas. A sequel, would you watch it? I think I'd be quite interested to see sort of the space adventures that these guys go on, and how that progresses, and how they all form or become parents, I guess, to Cotnim as well. And with these types of films, especially maybe it's just because Rebel Moon is still sort of familiar in my mind, but the villain Sullivan, is he actually dead? Or is he going to come back and haunt them in the sequel? I just think that's something to keep in the back of my mind as I ponder if I would watch a sequel anyway. All right, I'm ready to wrap this up. We give the film a rating out of 5. This is well worth a watch. The runtime might push some people away from it, but it zips along at a cracking pace, and it puts humanity at the middle of a sci-fi film with some great things to say about it too, like we've sort of spoken about. I'm giving this a 3.5 out of 5. Solid from me. 3.5. We're on socials. We have Facebook. We have Instagram, and we have X, formerly known as Twitter. The question is in the film, is Earth going to be saved? Will it be saved in the end? Maybe that's the sequel. I'm not sure. But you've got to be optimistic about, this crew survives. So surely Earth can survive as well. We're back next week. We are back next week with another international film. This one is from 2021. It's a French action comedy called The Misadventures of Hae and Cokeman, or in French, En passant Pecco, les carottes sont sweeties. My French is horrible, apologies. This is directed by Julien Hollande and stars Nazem Lies, Fred Testot, and Julie Ferrere. Give that one a watch if you're interested. A comedy from France. We've had a few French films. I can't think of any comedies, so this could be a different one. Let's check it out next week. Give it a watch. As always, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.